Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of our Chasing Elephants podcast. I am your boy, Jeff Wallace, and we are officially kicking off our summer session where we're talking to friends of ours from various contexts, man, thought leaders from all around the world. And I'm excited that I get to kick it off this week with a dear, dear friend of mine, man. If you've been to Youth Pastor Summit or some of our lift tours, you've seen him. You've heard from him. You've been blessed by him. He is a 15-year youth ministry vet, and I'm talking about 15 good years. Not some of them 15 years, you got 2 years here, 2 years there. Nah, this brother's been doing it for 15 years strong. He is the founder and president of the Collective Workers Youth Group, the Collective Youth Workers Group. Let me make sure I say that right. And it's a dope collective where he really pours into youth pastors and youth leaders all around the world. And so I've been fortunate to be a guest in one of his sessions there. And so it's phenomenal youth workers group that he is the founder and president of. He is also the author of the 5-minute Gratitude Teens Boys Devotional. Let me just tell you, if you are looking for graduation gifts for your teen boys, this is a phenomenal book. I have it. I actually gave it to, I got 3 of them, gave them to all 3 of my boys. And so it's a great read. He's an urban ministry mentor to so many. He's also, back in the ATL soon and doing some great stuff, man. Super proud of him on that. I'll let him, I won't steal his thunder. I'll let him tell that. The only thing, ladies and gentlemen, I got to say this. The only thing, now you'll see, we have our Chasing Elephant, this is our mascot here. There's only one thing about this brother that, we disagree on. We both love Jesus. We both want to make disciples. We both are cut from the same cloth of urban ministry and want to do things significant for the kingdom. There's only one thing. And Brent and I both disagree with this brother on, but it's okay because we love him anyway. He is, and I mean for real, a die-hard Alabama fan. Now, so for those of you Bama fans, we know we got a lot of you out there because it's like a cult. And you're going to really, really be excited about this brother coming because, ladies and gentlemen, he is for real about it. And we'll talk a little bit more about it in our time together. But I need for you, if you're driving, don't take your hands off the wheel. But if you can just, make some noise in your spirit for my brother and friend, Christopher Cox. Chris Cox. What's up, Chris?
What's good, man? Wow, what an introduction. That was amazing.
Yes, man. And so listen, I just told him, man, you're a Bama fan and stuff, and Brent and I, we still love you though. So,
Yeah, and that's what makes being on this podcast so amazing. Like chasing elephants, that's what the Georgia Bulldogs have been doing. Y'all are trying to catch up with how many national championships we have and things like that. And y'all getting close. A little too close for comfort, but
oh man, I'll wait to that was good. You were waiting for that one. That was good. Chasing elephants. That's wow. That one right there, Chris. Okay.
Give the title.
Yes. That's so good, man. And now let's let everybody know you're from Alabama, so you're not like this bandwagon. You're from Alabama, right?
Yes, my parents are from Alabama. Now, I was military, so I was born in Texas, but both of my parents are from Alabama. They've been together since like 3rd grade, grew up across the street from each other. And so Alabama is home. My dad retired when I was in the 5th grade and we moved back to Alabama. So I finished out all of my middle school and high school years there. And that's where I found my deep love and passion for the Tide. So yes, I claim Alabama. That's where I'm from. That's where my family is from. And then I spent some time in Georgia where I met Jeff here. But and then since then, I've been in Virginia for the last 6 years. But as you just said, in the next few weeks, I'll be relocating back to Georgia. So I am super excited about this new season of ministry that I'm going to be in. I'm still serving students, but it's just, it's been a journey.
Yeah, man. That's so good, man. I just want to say first and foremost, before we jump into, I got a couple questions I want to ask you, but man, I'm just so proud of you, bro. Like I've watched you be faithful. I've watched you grow. grind, man. I've watched you, regardless of context, regardless of resources, man. I've watched you serve so faithfully every place you've been and serve students faithfully. So, man, it's an honor to call you friend, bro. Like, real talk, it's an honor to call you friend.
I appreciate that so much, man.
Yeah. Well, here, man, listen, we can chop it up all day long, but I just got a couple questions I want just to kind of let everybody get to know you, and then we're going to kind of just talk about a couple things. But so just tell us, for those who may not know, how did you, man, get into youth ministry? What's that story like?
So, yeah, man, like, I think my start in youth ministry, I would have to give it to actually my high school days. So when I was in high school, I would say that my first experience of leading students was leading my peers in high school. We had for our Black History Month program, because I'm also a musician and I could teach like parts to singing and things like that. So the principal, when I was in about 10th grade, gave me the responsibility of putting together a gospel choir for our Black History Month program at our school. And so we did that. It was fun. It was amazing. I taught them and we sung. But after that, they didn't want to stop. So we started to go around to different churches and different groups all around my hometown there. And we would sing at different churches, but we would come together like maybe once a week, and we would practice. And through that, I've learned like how to really like walk with people and disciple people, because as I was walking with my peers, they were showing me a great deal of respect. So I had to do a lot of conflict resolution, a lot of mentorship, talking to people, just getting to learn how to be empathetic to people around me. And so that's where I really feel like I got my start and my foundation for youth ministry. And from there, when I did graduate and I moved out of my hometown, I would come back every year. And I would do a youth conference in the month of June. I would do like a week-long workshop teaching songs, and then we would do like a 3-day service at the end. And so I was kind of like the youth pastor of my hometown, because they really didn't have youth ministry. It's a small town in Alabama. There was no real full-time youth pastors, but there were a whole bunch of churches just in the area who their kids would just come out and we would just have a good time. So that's where I really got my start in youth ministry. I would have to get into that.
Yeah, man, that's so good, man. And what I love about that story, Chris, is, we think about vocation, ministry vocation, a lot of people think, and especially because we have a lot of students that are listeners, they think, man, there's going to be some camp or D-Now weekend where, there's a invitation time at the end of that message. And the preacher is going to say, hey, if you feel a call to ministry, raise your hand or stand up and come forth. And it doesn't always happen like that. Sometimes our call to ministry, that call to vocational ministry, man, it comes through teaching music, man. I love that. Like sometimes the Lord can use the most unconventional ways to begin to, show himself to us. And I love that and stuff. And,
yeah, I mean, I believe we all have gifts, we all have talents, and we all have everything we need right now to start, to at least start. There are people who are around you who are watching you. When you start to see, because leadership is all about influence. And when you see that you are able to influence people who are around you to make better decisions, to believe in themselves and to do things like that, then you can take those talents and merge it with your influence. And then you're starting your journey of leadership right there. So, it doesn't have to be at a church. It doesn't have to be on the staff. It doesn't have to be after you graduate college. It could be right now. Yeah. And God will cultivate certain things, especially in those stages. There's so much that I've learned before I was handed a job description and a position, just through serving, that has helped me become who I needed to be when those things came. So I'm glad I just kind of started, man.
Yeah, no, man, that's so good. That's so good. That's so helpful. I love that. Now, as you have, gone through that 15-year journey of ministry, I'm sure everything wasn't, peachy and sunshine and roses and stuff. And, I think there is, for all of us as leaders, there's the ebbs and flows of leadership, right? There's always going to be those 3 seasons of ministry. You got the seasons of great momentum where everything is just, it's on the rise. There's growth. There's a lot of momentum. Then the opposite of that is a season of decline, where it's just like, oh my gosh, things are going crazy, and how do we restart that? But then the third is that season where there's just that season of plateau, where it's just more of the same, and you're stagnant and stuck and stuff. So we all have those seasons of ministry, man, that we deal with. But as you look back over your journey, man, like, what was one of the most challenging ministry moments for you? Like, as you look back over your journey, man, and those, the ebbs and flows of ministry, man, like, is there one or two? I mean, and it doesn't have to be particularly in youth ministry, because you've been in ministry, period, for the last 15 years in a variety of contexts and roles. But is there one or two that you could think back of, like, man, whoo, that was a defining moment in my ministry,
Yeah, I love the way you even described that, because while I was going through this one particular season that I'll share, I really looked at the previous season of serving, and I saw exactly what you're describing, those ups, those downs, those times when things just felt stagnant and stuck. And God showed me through that, that every season that I'm in is preparing me for the next one. And in between those seasons is a door that I have to have access to. And so I have like a t-shirt that I got, and it's called, I'm cut out for this. That's what the graphic says. And basically it's like, when you look at a key, that's what it looks like. There's these ups, these downs. They look like hills and valleys. Then sometimes it's just straight for a second. But those specific cuts is what really gives the definement of that key, the ability to unlock the door that gives access to that next season. And that's how it's been for me, is that those ups and those downs, they have cut out in me what I needed to be able to have access to wherever God was leading me to. But one that I'll share, man, was just even in my transition coming from Atlanta to Hampton. There was a lot of questions that I had, because in that transition, like, while I was in Atlanta, I really thought like I would just be in Atlanta forever. I'm not ever leaving Atlanta. I was cool. I was in a good church. I was like, okay, I'm straight, but then I believe that God allowed the season that I was in to be a little rocky so that it would push me to a space of transition. And I remember walking through that period. It was about the same time that you were kind of transitioning out of Georgia and going to Orlando. And we sat down and we had breakfast, and you even encouraged me through that time to let me know, hey, man, the stuff that you are going through, the sacrifices that you are making, they are normal. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So during that time of transition, and what I would say is a tough season, it was great to have people who have been in the game a little bit longer than me tell me that what I was going through was okay. Because like, if you are in ministry for any period of time, or if you are in life, let's just take ministry out of it. Life have that season where life be lifing, and so. Just because you're called, or just because you're a pastor, or just because you're influenced, whatever you are, it does not exempt you from life, right? So that was a tough season for me. It was just a tough season mainly because I was uncertain if I had strategy or if I was just lucky, right? Because I was able to do some amazing things while I was serving in Atlanta. Yeah. But I was like, is it just because I just lucked up and found some good people, like some students that character like me? Or did I really in that develop a strategy to be able to do ministry? So like transitioning from Atlanta and coming here to Virginia to a whole new space where hardly no one knew me. I didn't have a lot of friends. I didn't have a lot of anything around me. It was a tough transition because of the thoughts that I continued to have in my mind. Like, am I going to really be able to do this? Yeah. But then I just anchored down and I just started doing what I knew to do, to just love on people, to walk with people, to prioritize discipleship, prioritize presence, to show up for people. And that season turned out to be beautiful. So it's been an amazing 6 years. So yeah,
man. I love that, man. Mic drop phrase for me was, the question, that you asked yourself of, were you lucky or did you have strategy? Like, that's really, really powerful, Chris, because I mean, a lot of times, especially when everything you touch turns into gold, right? Or everything that you do, man. Like, I mean, there's some challenges, yeah, but I mean, like you're seeing, death to life stories. You're seeing students, man, really kind of fall in love with Jesus and get connected to ministry. You're seeing people get involved, man, in ministry and all the stuff. It's like, hey, am I lucky, or is this like a actual strategy? And I think that I think that yes, it's okay for us to be grateful for the favor of God, but being grateful for the favor of God should never exempt us from doing the hard work and building the strategy so we can have sustainable ministry that God has entrusted us with.
Absolutely. Yeah. Paying attention to the details and really understanding the journey that you're on is so beneficial, because these are the things that you get to share with other people when new leaders start to emerge, and when you get to stand in the room. Like, I've had the privilege of being able to come and to share at YPS, and I'm in the room with people who are doing this. Some of them have a little more education, a little more experience, and all of that, but just being able to articulate the journey and the strategy and the details is what makes the difference. And that's what can become very helpful, especially just to make sure that there's longevity in this thing as it relates to us continuing to lay the foundation of who God is to a next generation. So yeah, absolutely, man. I love it.
So good. So good. All right. So let's get down in the weeds a little bit, deal with, I want to ask a practical question, as we are dealing with this generation called Gen Z, right? And excuse me, and with your tenured in ministry, bro, you've been able to minister to a couple of different generations, particularly millennials and now Gen Z. What are some things that you are seeing, some trends that you're seeing with Gen Z? So, we've kind of talked ministry stuff and kind of how to deal with tension points and all stuff. But now let's get down a little bit of weeds and practical. Like, what are some things that, as you're looking at the landscape of ministry and this generation, what are some trends in particular that you're seeing within Gen Z right now?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, man, it was shocking to me, man. I was sitting and I was thinking a couple of days ago, and I started to just age myself a little bit. It got a little scary, man. I was like, I can actually remember the time where there was no available internet all the time. You know what I'm saying? Like, in my younger years, I can remember that. But now we are pastoring a generation who does not have that memory. Like, they grew up on technology. There never was a day that they were not connected to the World Wide Web. And so a lot of the trends and a lot of their personality has derived from social media concepts. And one of those being this concept of influence. Influencer is like the peak of what you can of status and what you can gain on social media. So students now, they look to be led by influencers, which is okay, because like I said earlier, leadership is about influence. And so one thing that I've learned as it relates to this generation, and I learned this when I was in a high school doing a visit, is that influence is not a privilege of position when it comes to them. You don't get influence because of the position that you carry. So just because you're a teacher doesn't mean you get to be my teacher, right? And so I learned that when I was in a high school, because there was a young lady who was doing something, and the teacher stepped outside of his class as she was walking by and tried to correct her behavior. And she looked at him like, who are you and who you talking to? Like, the hairs on my neck kind of stood up, because I was raised a little different. Like, every adult could get a piece if they wanted to, Exactly. So I just respected people because of the position that they held. And now this generation, they wish to be led by people who have relational equity with them, people who they know, people who have taken the opportunity to show some ownership towards them. So it's, you don't just get influence because of your position. It is something that you earn the rights to, right? And that's building relationship. That's establishing trust. That's being able to have conversations that help shape and mold and help people imagine a better version of themselves. And so that's one of the main things that I've learned. And, this generation, they're wired for it. Like and people, and you can see that trend starting to trickle down kind of like everywhere now. People are now even paying $15 a month to be an influencer just to have a little blue check. You know what I'm saying? Because it's important. And as a leader and someone who desires to have influence over the next generation, one tip that I will say is that influence begins with I. Right. The word influence even begins with I. Even if you want to become an influencer on social media, before you can carry that blue check mark, there has to be some type of verification of who you are, your identity. So you have to be solid in yourself, like know who you are. You don't have to try to be the next person, but just be confident in who you are. Be yourself, and you will have influence for who God wants you to have influence with.
Yeah, man. Dude, that's so good. It was so crazy. I was just reading the other day, not too long ago, rather, it was that there's 4 levels of influence from 1,000 followers on social media sites all the way up to 1 million. And you start with, they call a nano influencer. That's the bottom tier. And then you got a micro influencer. When you graduate from nano, you go to micro. And then from micro, you go to macro, and then from macro, you go to mega. And mega is 1 million plus followers on any social media site. And the idea is if you can get to macro or mega, then, one, obviously you're getting paid, and everything, but they see you, culture, society, sees you as this high level influencer. And really this generation I've seen, they respect that. Like if you're a nano or a micro influencer, it's like, all right, cool. But get to macro and mega, man, it's crazy. And even here's the crazy part, Chris, that I saw, and maybe you've seen this as well, and leaders that are listening. If you are macro or mega, you can say all kind of, things of like blasphemous stuff. Like, you could say some crazy stuff and people will pay attention. It's like, oh, it becomes their worldview because they're equating your level of social media influence and amount of followers you have to the validity of the things that you're saying. And people don't understand the importance and the necessity of stewarding your voice well, especially on a macro and a mega level. I mean, I think on that, brother, you nano, you need to steward well on nano. So let me just say for those listeners, if you nano or micro, still you need to be saying God honoring things and stuff.
Yeah, because the ability to use your voice and shift like people's behavior patterns is that's a big deal. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And exactly what you're saying is so true. And that's the scary part of all of this is that it doesn't take a high moral standard to elevate in those levels of influence. And so it is important that for who God has given us to steward influence over, that we do that well and that we build those relationships so that they can have a trustworthy voice in their life.
Man, that's so good. That's so good. All right, brother. Well, listen, I'm gonna ask you one more. And I think this is important because I think of my journey, bro, in ministry. And I always, Chris, I like to share more of my failures than successes, because for me, man, I try to use my failures as lessons, right? I think every leader should be in a position where they're humble and they're self-reflective, right? Like you don't ever just pat yourself on the back and focus on your successes. I think it's important to look at, oh man, here's where I dropped the ball or here's where I failed, and so as a person who's gone through the ministry journey, still going on the ministry journey, person who's had some battle scars, some tread on the tires. When you think back, brother, over your life, man, and when you started off in ministry, like what's one or two things or something, or what's something that you wish somebody would have told you, Chris, back then that would have propelled you to even another level of ministry, or it could have helped you head off some things that you had to discover through trial and error. You know what I mean? Like, what's some life lessons that you wish you would have heard back when you first started 15 plus years ago?
Absolutely. I think what would have been most helpful for me is just that it's probably learning that seasons aren't the only thing that change. People change, places change.
Oh,
yeah. And I probably would have spent so much time trying to hold on to certain things that I felt like defined me, or that I felt like gave me some kind of level of just, I think I've found my validation in so many things that were just changeable easily, if that's making sense. Yeah. And I would allow certain things to validate me. I would have just stuck with what God was showing me. And I would have understood, like, there are times where it is okay and it is healthy to let certain things go, or to let certain people go, or to let certain practices go. And that's one of the biggest lessons that I had to learn, was not just how to learn new information, but how to unlearn unhelpful information. Wow. And I think putting that into practice is what's made me the leader I am today, because it's allowed me to be open to a whole lot more, to be more graceful when I need to be, and to just forever be a student, just to always be learning. So
yeah, man, that's good. I think for me, bro, I think, I got so many. I was thinking about that myself, even as I was asking. I think for me, I think I was more of a competitor than a discipler early on, and I think that, and what I mean by that is I was so competitive with myself in the church, down the street, as far as numbers and everything like that. If they were doing a youth revival that, they had, 1,000 kids, what I'm saying? I wanted 1,001, what I'm saying? I mean, like, and it really, if I'm honest, it really wasn't God honoring, because that was like priority. I value numbers. I'm not saying that we don't value numbers, but more so than, really kind of the discipleship journey that I needed to take students on. And so you sometimes can sacrifice spending time with the one, because you're trying with everything within you to get the many in the room. And I wish, I would have heard that early on, like, no. It's like the 80-20 principle. When you take 80% of your time, put in 20% of the people, you get 100% of the growth that you need, right? And so I wish that I would have early in ministry would have had somebody say, hey, man, get your core, disciple them, develop them, and then allow the ministry to be for the people, by the people. Yeah. I got there, but you know what I'm saying? Like, it took some stuff, and because I think one of the things that was really early on, man, we had a great, like, my first real youth revival, man. It was a huge success, man. And it was great. But what I realized is, okay, so at that last Friday, it was a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday youth revival. And then it was great. We had all these students, but it didn't translate to Sunday morning. You know what I mean? Like, and I knew a lot of them was unchurched and didn't go to school, but it didn't really translate. I was like, wait a minute. I thought all y'all were coming because we were lit. Like, we had a great time and stuff. But I didn't have any students that I've been discipling that were really plugged into those high schools that were there to be able to kind of coach and connect them with those who were there, man. So,
yeah, I think I could agree, because sometimes our measuring stick, like, it's just off. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And it doesn't even match, like, our ultimate example, who is Jesus. Like, Jesus, he started with some guys, and then his influence and his followers started to increase. And you would think that the closer you are getting to, that great thing that you are here to do, that the more people you would have following you. But his decreased.
Right.
The more the more he elevated, it started to decrease. And he had people who, like in John chapter 6, verse 66, who left. There were disciples who left. And he never, allowed that to define, like to say whether he was still doing what God sent him here to do or not. And so it's super powerful. And then it's that core of people who God has assigned to you that will continue to allow the legacy of what you have been doing and to even tell the story of what you're doing long after you're here. Because that's one of the things that I've learned is that, Jesus, and that's why I do relationships the way I do and discipleship the way that I do is because one thing that I love sharing with leaders is that, nothing that we've heard that Jesus did, we didn't hear from him himself. Like Jesus didn't write his own story. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. He just allowed people to be in close enough proximity towards him to where they wrote the story that we get to read today about all that Jesus did.
Yeah, man.
So I think that is super amazing because sometimes as leaders, we get so caught up in trying to write our own story and make sure our own story is taught right. Yeah, but it's like, no, if you do relationships well, somebody else will tell the story better than you can ever tell it. And so, man. So that's the leader that I wish to be now. So,
man, okay, look at you with the mic drop deal, man. That's so good. I'm not even gonna add to it. I think that's so good, man. Hey, Chris, brother, let me just say on behalf of myself and Brent, man, thank you, brother, for one, jumping on this podcast, two, for just being the leader that you are, man, and how you are relentless in investing in the next generation, man. And so I'm so grateful for you, man. And tell everybody, man, where can they find you? How can they follow you? You know what I'm saying? And all that good stuff.
Yeah, so you can find me all over. All of my social media is Chris Cox Speaks with a Z though, SPEAKZ. So that's my website, www.chriscoxspeaks.com, or Instagram. You can find me on Facebook that way. You can find information about the nonprofit that I have called the Collective Youth Workers Group on my website or on my social medias. And I would love to connect with you. That's one of my favorite things to do. So if you are listening to this podcast and you follow me from here, shoot me a DM. Let me know that you heard me on the Chasing Elephants, Chasing the Tide podcast. And I would love to connect with you and just show you some love. So appreciate it. And thank you so much, Jeff, for the opportunity, man. You have been you were mentoring me before I met you. So, when I got into youth ministry, the first thing I did was like, how do you do youth ministry as a Black person?
Yeah, as a Black person, I know, right? Yeah, man. That's a whole nother conversation. Yeah. Yeah, man.
And the urban guide for youth ministry that you wrote popped up. And I was like, okay, let me learn from this guy. So when I met you and found out that, your content was the same as your character, it has been a blessing to me throughout all these years. So thank you so much. And to the team at SLU, I love y'all. Appreciate this opportunity.
Man, thank you so much, Chris. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, please do me a favor. As always, we want you to subscribe if you haven't already, or you know somebody who needs to. Make sure you do that. We want you to like. You got to rate, but only positive ratings. For those who want to do less than positive ratings, we ask you just to pray for us instead. And so, but we want you to review and rate us and all that good stuff. You can follow me at I am Jeff Wallace. Again, that's at I am Jeff Wallace. My brother Brent at Brent A. Crow, and always you can follow us at SLU Lead, Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is our time together. Again, I hope you will follow my brother Chris. He's a great dude outside of the whole little Alabama thing. We may have to, when Brent and I get back together, we might have to rename this podcast now. And so, but guys, listen, until next time, continue to be intentional in every day of your life of being the best version of yourself. Until we speak and see each other again, God bless you. Peace out.